Right now, as you watch this video, you're performing what would have seemed like pure magic just 100 years ago. You're receiving moving pictures and sound transmitted through invisible waves, pulled from a computer thousands of miles away, delivered to a device in your pocket that's more powerful than the computers that sent humans to the moon. But here's what's even more mind-blowing. You probably have no idea how any of it actually works. And that's not your fault. The internet is deliberately designed to be invisible. It's like the plumbing in your house. You only think about it when it stops working. But unlike plumbing, which moves water through pipes, the internet moves something far stranger. Tiny bursts of electricity that somehow carry your thoughts, your face, your voice, and every cat video ever made. Today, we're gonna pull back the curtain. We're gonna trace a journey that happens a billion times per second across the planet, the journey of data from one point to another. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your phone the same way again. Let me start with a question that sounds simple but isn't. What exactly is the internet? Most people would say it's a network of computers, and they'd be right, technically. But that's like saying a human is a collection of cells. True, but it misses the magic entirely. The internet is actually the largest cooperative project in human history. It's a network of networks, millions of independent networks owned by thousands of different organizations, all agreeing to speak the same language and pass each other's messages. There's no CEO of the internet, no headquarters, no single point of control. As the internet pioneer Vint Cerf once said, the internet is a reflection of our society, and that mirror is going to be reflecting what we see. If we do not like what we see in that mirror, the problem is not to fix the mirror, we have to fix society. But before we fix anything, we need to understand what we've built. Act 1, the physical internet, 5 to 25 minutes. The cable under your feet. Let's start with something most people get completely wrong. Where is the internet? If you asked random people on the street, most would probably point up to the sky. It's in the cloud, they'd say. It's wireless, it's satellites. Wrong. Well, mostly wrong. The internet is not floating ethereally in the atmosphere. The internet is buried underground, sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and yes, some of it is in buildings, big, boring, air-conditioned buildings that look like warehouses. Here's a number that'll blow your mind. Right now, there are approximately 1.4 million kilometers of submarine cables crisscrossing the ocean floors of our planet. That's enough cable to wrap around Earth's equator 35 times. And these aren't delicate little wires either. Modern submarine cables are about as thick as a garden hose, and they're incredibly tough. They have to be. They're sitting on the ocean floor, sometimes 8,000 meters down, in total darkness, crushing pressure, near freezing temperatures. And here's what's wild. Roughly 99% of all intercontinental internet traffic travels through these cables, not satellites, cables. When you're video calling your friend in Tokyo, your data isn't bouncing off satellites in space like you might think. It's traveling through a cable that was laid by a specialized ship, buried by underwater robots, and is currently sitting next to weird deep-sea creatures who definitely don't appreciate the irony that they're living next to cat video infrastructure. There's a famous story in 2008 that perfectly illustrates how physical the internet really is. The country of Armenia lost internet access. Not slow internet, no internet. The whole country went dark. What happened? An elderly Georgian woman was digging for scrap metal and accidentally severed a fiber optic cable with her shovel. One grandmother, one shovel, an entire country offline. The internet, it turns out, is as vulnerable as it is powerful. Inside the cable, light speed isn't fast enough. Let's zoom in on one of these cables. What's actually inside? At the core, you've got fiber optic strands. These are basically ultra-pure glass threads, thinner than a human hair. And through these glass threads, we're sending pulses of light, lasers specifically. Now, you might be thinking, light, that's the fastest thing in the universe. Nothing can beat light speed. True, but here's the cruel joke. Even at the speed of light, there's still delay. It's called latency, and it's one of the internet's biggest unsolved problems. The speed of light in a vacuum is about 300,000 kilometers per second. Sounds instant, right? But light in fiber optic cable travels slower, about 200,000 kilometers per second, because it's bouncing around inside the glass. Let's do the math. The distance from New York to London is about 5,500 kilometers. So the absolute theoretical minimum time for data to travel that distance is about 27 milliseconds. But in reality, it's more like 70 to 100 milliseconds round trip. Why? Because your data doesn't travel in a straight line. Remember, cables follow the ocean floor. They go through multiple switching stations. They get routed through different networks. This is why competitive gamers lose their minds over ping times. In a first-person shooter, 100 milliseconds might as well be an eternity. By the time you see your opponent on your screen, they've already moved. By the time you click to shoot, they've already shot you. You're fighting a ghost from the past. There's a brilliant scene in the movie The Big Short where they explain complex financial instruments using Margot Robbie in a bathtub. If I could have any celebrity explain latency, I'd want Keanu Reeves to do it while dodging bullets in slow motion. See, Neo, by the time you see the bullet, it's already past you. The internet works the same way. You're always seeing the past. The buildings where the internet lives. Now let's talk about data centers, the actual physical locations where the internet lives. Imagine a building the size of several football fields, filled wall to wall with computers. The air is cold, kept at around 18 degrees Celsius, 64 degrees Fahrenheit, constantly. The sound is deafening, thousands of fans creating an industrial hum. There are no windows. Security rivals a bank vault. These are data centers, and they're where your emails live, where YouTube videos are stored, where your photos sit waiting to be accessed. Here's a crazy statistic. Google alone operates over 30 data centers globally, and some of them consume as much electricity as a city of 200,000 people. In 2023, data centers globally consumed about 460 terawatt hours of electricity, roughly 2% of all global electricity use. That's more than entire countries like the UK. And it's growing. Every TikTok video, every Netflix stream, every cloud backup, it all has to physically exist somewhere on some hard drive, in some building, using actual electricity. There's something deeply ironic about the cloud. We use this fluffy, weightless metaphor for something that involves millions of tons of concrete, steel, and silicon, consuming enough power to run nations. As the comedian Stephen Wright once said, "Right now I'm having amnesia and deja vu at the same time. I think I've forgotten this before." That's how I feel about the cloud. We've forgotten that digital storage is physical storage. The Internet Exchange Point, where networks meet. Here's where things get really interesting. Let's talk about Internet Exchange Points, IXPs. Imagine the internet as a city. Every network is a neighborhood, and they all need roads connecting them. IXPs are the major intersections where all the roads meet. One of the largest IXPs in the world is in Frankfurt, Germany, the DECX. At peak times, it handles over 17 terabits of data per second. That's the equivalent of streaming 3.4 million HD movies simultaneously from one building. And here's how it works. Let's say you're on Comcast in Philadelphia trying to watch a video hosted on a server in Europe by Hetzner. Your data needs to travel from Comcast's network to Hetzner's network. They don't have a direct connection. So your data goes to an IXP. There, in a physical room, Comcast's cables and Hetzner's cables are literally plugged into the same switch. It's like a party where all the networks hang out and exchange data. And the best part is nobody owns the IXP. It's neutral territory. It's like Switzerland for data. Networks that compete with each other in the marketplace physically connect to each other in these buildings. The social dynamics are fascinating. Network engineers from rival companies will literally be in the same building, running cables to the same switches, making sure their data plays nice together. It's cooperation at a massive scale, driven by pure economics. It's cheaper to exchange data locally than to route it halfway around the world. Act 2. The protocols. How computers actually talk.
Artlist.io.
IP addresses. Digital home address. Okay, we've covered the physical infrastructure. Now let's talk about how data actually moves through all this hardware. First, every device on the internet needs
Music
an address.
licensing reimagined.
Just like your home has a street address so the post office knows where to deliver your mail, every device needs an IP address so the internet knows where to send data. An IP address looks something like this: 192.168.1.1. That's 4 numbers, each between 0 and 255, separated by dots. This is called IPv4, Internet Protocol version 4.
Artlist.io.
Here's the problem. That format only allows for about 4.3 billion unique addresses. 4.3 billion, you might think. That's plenty. Except there are about 8 billion people on Earth, many with multiple devices. Your phone, laptop, tablet, smart TV, doorbell camera, car, refrigerator, they all need addresses. We ran out of IPv4 addresses years ago. The solution? IPv6. It looks like this: 2041/0DB8/855/8A2E/030/0370/7334. It's longer, it's uglier, but it provides 340 undecillion unique addresses. That's 340 with 36 zeros after it. That's enough addresses to give every atom on the surface of the Earth its own IP address and still have plenty left over. The joke in the networking community is that we'll never run out of IPv6 addresses until we start giving IP addresses to individual atoms, and even then, we'd probably be fine. DNS, the phone book of the internet. Okay, here's the next problem.
Artlist.io.
Humans are terrible at remembering numbers. Quick, what's YouTube's IP address? You have no idea, right? But you know www.youtube.com. This is where DNS comes in, the domain name system. It's basically a gigantic distributed phone book that translates human-readable names into IP addresses. When you type youtube.com into your browser, here's what happens. Your computer asks, "Hey, what's the IP address for youtube.com?" The request goes to a DNS server, usually run by your ISP. That server either knows the answer or asks another DNS server. Eventually, someone knows, and the answer comes back: youtube.com is at 142.250.185.46. Now your computer can actually connect to YouTube. This all happens in milliseconds, and you never see it. DNS is so fundamental to how the internet works that when it breaks, the whole internet appears to break. There was a famous incident in October 2016 when a company called Dime, a major DNS provider, was hit with a massive cyber attack. Suddenly, people couldn't access Twitter, Netflix, Spotify, Reddit, not because those sites were down, but because their computers couldn't figure out where those sites were. It's like if you wanted to call your friend, but someone stole every phone book in the city. Your friend's phone still works, your phone still works, but you can't connect because you don't know the number. Paul Makapetris, the inventor of DNS, created it in 1983. He's gone on record saying that if he'd known how critical DNS would become, he would have built in more security from the start. As it is, DNS was designed for a much smaller, more trusting internet, and we've been patching security holes ever since. Packets, breaking data into pieces. Now let's talk about how data actually moves. You might imagine that when you send an email, it travels from your computer to the recipient's computer in one continuous stream, like water through a pipe. Nope. Instead, your email gets chopped up into little pieces called packets. Each packet is about 1,500 bytes, or characters, maximum. Your email, along with all the attachments, gets divided into hundreds or thousands of these packets. Then, each packet travels independently across the internet. They might take completely different routes. Some might go through New York, others through Chicago. Some might go through 5 routers, others through 15. Then, at the destination, all these packets get reassembled into your original email. Why do it this way? Efficiency and reliability. Imagine you're moving houses and you need to transport all of your stuff across the city. You could rent one massive truck and make one trip, but what if that truck breaks down? What if there's construction blocking that specific route? Better to use multiple smaller vehicles. If one breaks down, the others keep going. If one route is blocked, they can take alternate routes. That's exactly how packet switching works. Here's a fun experiment you can try right now. Open up your command prompt or terminal and type traceroute.google.com or tracertgoogle.com on Windows. This will show you every single router your packets travel through to reach Google. You'll see IP addresses, locations, and the time it takes at each hop. It's like watching your data's road trip in real time. When I ran this from my location, my packets went through 12 different routers, bouncing through 3 different cities operated by 4 different companies before reaching Google's servers. The entire journey took 34 milliseconds.
Music licensing reimagined.
TCP/IP, the conversation protocol. Now, sending packets is one thing, but how do you make sure they all arrive in the right order without corruption? This is where TCP comes in, Transmission Control Protocol. TCP is like a very paranoid postal worker. Every time you send a packet, TCP demands a receipt. I sent packet number 147. Did you get it? If the answer is yes, great, send the next one. If the answer is no, or if there's no answer, send it again. TCP also handles sequencing. Remember, packets can arrive out of order. Packet 147 might arrive before packet 146. TCP makes sure everything gets reassembled correctly, like a jigsaw puzzle. There's a joke among programmers. The best thing about UDP jokes is that I don't care if you get them. UDP, User Datagram Protocol, is TCP's reckless cousin. It just fires packets at the destination and doesn't check if they arrived. This sounds terrible, but it's actually perfect for certain applications. Live video calls? You want UDP. If a few packets get lost, you get a brief glitch, but the conversation continues. With TCP, you'd have awkward pauses while the system waits for confirmation that every single packet arrived. It's the difference between a perfectionist and someone who's good enough. Sometimes good enough is actually better. HTTPS and HTTP, the language of the web. Finally, let's talk about how web browsers actually communicate with web servers. HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, is the language browsers speak. It's surprisingly simple. When you visit a website, your browser essentially says, get index.html http/1.1, host www.example.com. That's it. Hey, example.com, give me your index.html page, please. The server responds with the page, your browser renders it, and you see a website. HTTPS is the same thing but encrypted. The S stands for secure. Everything between your browser and the server is scrambled so that even if someone intercepts your data, they can't read it. This is critical for things like banking, shopping, email, anything where you're sending sensitive information. Here's a scary thought. Before HTTPS became standard around 2014 to 2017, a huge amount of web traffic was unencrypted. Anyone on the same Wi-Fi network as you could potentially see what websites you were visiting, what you were typing, what you were doing. Coffee shop Wi-Fi was basically a hacker's paradise. Security researchers used to demonstrate this at conferences by setting up a fake free Wi-Fi network and then projecting everyone's unencrypted web activity on a big screen. Awkward. Now, over 95% of web traffic is encrypted. That little padlock icon in your browser's address bar, that's not decorative. That's the only thing standing between your Amazon password and whoever's sitting 3 tables over at Starbucks with a laptop.
Act 3. The invisible infrastructure. 50 minutes to 70 minutes. BGP, the routing protocol that runs the internet. Let me tell you about the most important internet protocol you've never heard of. BGP, Border Gateway Protocol. BGP is how routers figure out where to send your data. It's the GPS of the internet. except instead of roads, it's navigating networks. Here's how it works. Every network on the internet announces which IP addresses it's responsible for. Then, using BGP, routers share this information with each other and build massive routing tables, basically maps of how to reach every destination on the internet. The problem? BGP was designed in 1989 for a much smaller internet, and it operates on trust. When a network announces, "I can reach these IP addresses," every other network just believes them. There's no verification, no authentication. It's like if I stood up right now and announced, "I am the King of France," and everyone just accepted it without question. This has led to some spectacular failures. In 2008, Pakistan tried to block YouTube nationally. They used BGP to redirect all YouTube traffic to a black hole, except they accidentally advertised this route to the entire internet, not just Pakistan. For several hours, YouTube was down globally because Pakistan told the world's routers, "Send all YouTube traffic to us," and the routers said, "Okay." In 2017, a Russian telecom accidentally announced that they could route traffic for Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft. Suddenly, millions of people's data was being routed through Russia, not maliciously, just because of a configuration error. These are called BGP hijacks, and they happen more often than you think.
Music licensing
Sometimes it's
reimagined.
accidents. Sometimes it's countries trying to censor content. Sometimes it's actual attacks. The internet security community has been trying to fix BGP for decades, but there's a classic problem. You can't upgrade a plane while it's flying. BGP works, more or less, so completely replacing it would mean risking breaking the entire internet. As Bruce Schneier, the famous cryptographer, once said, "If you think technology can solve your security problems, then you don't understand the problems and you don't understand the technology." Content delivery networks, bringing the internet closer. Let's talk about why Netflix doesn't crash when everyone tries to watch Stranger Things at the same time. The answer is CDNs, content delivery
Music
networks.
licensing reimagined.
Here's the problem. If Netflix only had servers in one location, say California, and you're watching from Japan, your data would have to travel 10,000 plus kilometers. That's slow and expensive. CDNs solve this by copying popular content to servers all over the world. When you watch a Netflix show, you're probably not getting it from Netflix's main servers. You're getting it from a server that's geographically close to you, maybe even in your city. This is called edge caching, and it's how the internet handles billions of people watching the same viral videos, accessing the same websites, downloading the same files. Cloudflare, one of the largest CDN providers, has servers in over 300 cities worldwide. When you access a website that uses Cloudflare, your request goes to the nearest server, which is often just milliseconds away. Here's a mind-bending fact. Roughly 30 to 50% of all internet traffic is video streaming. Netflix alone accounts for about 15% of global downstream internet traffic. If CDNs didn't exist, the internet would be orders of magnitude slower and more expensive to operate. There's a great example from the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, when everyone suddenly started working from home, internet traffic spiked by 25 to 40% almost overnight. Zoom usage went from 10 million daily meeting participants to over 300 million in a matter of weeks. The internet didn't collapse. Why? CDNs, massive infrastructure investments, and a lot of very tired network engineers working 24/7 to keep things running. The dark side, undersea cable tapping. Let me tell you something that sounds like a spy thriller, but is absolutely real. Governments tap undersea internet cables. The most famous example is a project codenamed Tempora, run by British intelligence agency GCHQ. They physically tapped fiber-optic cables where they come ashore in the UK, copying vast amounts of internet traffic for analysis. How do you tap a fiber-optic cable? It's actually quite clever. You carefully bend the cable slightly, not enough to break it or even noticeably degrade the signal, and some of the light leaks out. You
capture that leaked light, convert it back to data, and boom, you're reading everyone's internet traffic. The NSA had a similar program called Upstream that tapped cables where they enter the United States. This is why encryption is so important. Even if someone is physically intercepting your data, if it's encrypted, it's just gibberish to them. But here's the really paranoid thought. What's to say that some of the companies laying these cables aren't building in secret access points from the start? There have been allegations that certain countries require cable manufacturers to build in secret access points. I'm not saying this is definitely happening. I'm just saying that the infrastructure of the internet creates opportunities for surveillance that would have been pure science fiction 50 years ago. As Edward Snowden revealed in 2013, the line between internet infrastructure and surveillance infrastructure is disturbingly thin. The economics. Who pays for all this? You pay your ISP for internet access, but your ISP also has costs. They have to pay to connect to the rest of the internet, and websites have to pay for hosting and bandwidth. It turns out there's a complex economy underlying the internet, based on something called peering agreements. Large networks make deals with each other. I'll carry your traffic if you carry mine. This is settlement-free peering. Nobody pays anybody because the traffic is roughly equal in both directions. But sometimes traffic is lopsided. Netflix sends way more data than it receives, so Netflix pays ISPs to carry its traffic. This is called paid peering or transit. Then there are the submarine cables themselves. Who pays for those? Usually consortiums of tech companies and telecom providers. Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft have all invested billions in laying their own private submarine cables. In fact, as of 2024, Google alone has invested in over 35 submarine cable projects. These tech companies realized that if they want to control their destiny, they need to control the infrastructure. It's like realizing you order so much pizza that it makes more sense to buy your own pizza oven, except the pizza oven costs $300 million and sits at the bottom of the ocean. Act 4. What happens when you click? 70 minutes to 85 minutes. The journey of a click. A step-by-step breakdown. Let's put everything together. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens when you type www.youtube.com into your browser and press enter. Every single step. Step 1. DNS lookup. 0 to 100 milliseconds. Your computer asks, what's the IP address for youtube.com? First, it checks its local cache. Maybe you visited YouTube recently and the address is still remembered. If not, it asks your router. Still not there? It asks your ISP's DNS server. Still not there? It asks one of the root DNS servers. There are 13 of these globally, and they're the starting point for all DNS lookups. The root server says, I don't know where youtube.com is, but I know who handles .com domains, and points you to a .com TLD server. That server says, I don't know the exact location, but I know who owns youtube.com, Google's DNS servers. Finally, Google's DNS servers respond with the actual IP address. All of this happens in the background, usually within 100 milliseconds. Step 2. TCP connection. 100 to 200 milliseconds. Now your computer knows where YouTube is. Time to establish a connection. This uses something called a TCP three-way handshake. It's like a polite introduction. Your computer. Hi, I want to connect to you. Here's my packet. SYN. YouTube server. Hi, I received your request. I'm ready. Here's my acknowledgement. SYN ACK. Your computer. Great, I got your acknowledgement. Let's talk. ACK. Only after this handshake can actual data transfer begin. Step 3. TLS handshake. 200 to 400 milliseconds. But wait, we want a secure connection, HTTPS, so there's another handshake for encryption. Your computer and YouTube server negotiate which encryption algorithm to use, exchange cryptographic keys, and verify each other's identities using digital certificates. This is the digital equivalent of two spies meeting in a dark alley and establishing a secret code that only they understand.
Step 4. HTTP request, 400 to 500 milliseconds. Finally, your browser sends the actual request, get/http/2, host www.youtube.com, user agent mozilla.5.0. This tells YouTube, give me your homepage, please. Oh, and here's some info about my browser in case you need to optimize the content. Step 6. Server processing, 500 to 600 milliseconds.
Step 7. Rendering, 800 to 1500 milliseconds. Your browser receives all the packets, reassembles them, and starts rendering the page. Parse the HTML, load the CSS and style everything. Execute JavaScript. Load images and videos. Render the final page on your screen. Total time, about 1 to 2 seconds from the moment you press enter to when you see YouTube's homepage. In those 1 to 2 seconds, your data traveled potentially thousands of miles through dozens of routers and switches across multiple networks, was encrypted and decrypted, broken apart and reassembled, and involved servers on multiple continents coordinating to deliver exactly what you wanted. And you thought it was just buffering. What makes things slow? Now you understand the process. Let's talk about what makes it slow. Distance. Remember, even at light speed, distance matters. You can't beat physics. Number of hops. Each router in the path adds a tiny delay. If your data goes through 20 routers instead of 10, that's 20 separate processing steps. Congestion. If a router is handling millions of packets per second and yours shows up, it might have to wait in line. It's like traffic on a highway. Server processing time. Sometimes the server is just slow. Maybe the database takes a while. Maybe the server's overloaded. Last mile connection. This is often the biggest bottleneck. Your high-speed connection to your house might be slow. Your Wi-Fi might be congested. Your neighbor might be torrenting the entire Netflix catalog. There's a famous quote from programmer Phil Carlton that says, "There are only 2 hard things in computer science: cache and validation and naming things." But I'd add a third: making the internet fast enough that users don't notice the thousands of steps happening in the background. The subtle art of caching. Let's talk about caching, the unsung hero of internet performance. Caching means storing a copy of something close to where it's needed so you don't have to fetch it again. Your browser caches websites, your computer caches DNS lookups, CDNs cache popular content, your ISP might cache popular websites. There are literally dozens of layers of caching between you and the original source of any content. Here's an example. When you watch a YouTube video, YouTube doesn't send you the entire video at once. It sends you chunks, maybe 10 to 30 seconds worth at a time. Your browser caches these chunks. If you rewind and watch a section again, your browser doesn't re-download it from YouTube. It plays the cached version from your local storage. This is why if you're watching a video and your internet cuts out, you can still watch for a few more seconds. You're watching cached data. But caching creates philosophical problems. When you view a website, are you seeing the real website or are you seeing a cached copy? If the website changed 5 minutes ago, but your cached copy is from an hour ago, you're literally seeing an outdated version of reality. Most of the time this doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. Imagine if a news website updates a breaking news story with a correction, but millions of people are seeing the cached, incorrect version. The internet is full of these subtle philosophical issues that most people never think about. Act 5. The weird and wonderful. Internet packet routing is sometimes absurd. Let me tell you some true stories about how weird internet routing can get. In 2008, researchers found that internet traffic from London to New York was being routed through South Korea. Why? Because of how BGP works. That route was technically shorter in terms of number of network hops, even though it was geographically insane. The data was traveling 20,000 miles to go 3,500 miles. There was a period where internet traffic between 2 cities in South Africa was being routed through London, across an entire continent and ocean, because there wasn't sufficient direct peering between South African ISPs. This is like if you wanted to send a letter to your next-door neighbor, so you mailed it to Tokyo, they forwarded it to Buenos Aires, and then it finally came back to your neighbor. Absurd, but technically functional.
The internet is optimized for working, not for making sense. The protocol that changed everything. IPv6 still hasn't won. Let me rant about IPv6 for a moment. IPv6 was finalized in 1998. 1998! It was supposed to solve the IPv4 address shortage. We're now in 2026, and IPv6 adoption is still only around 45% globally. We've been running out of IPv4 addresses for a decade, and yet we're still primarily using IPv4. Why? Because switching is hard. Every device, every router, every piece of software has to be updated. And since IPv4 mostly still works through tricks like NAT, network address translation, there's no urgent crisis forcing everyone to switch. It's like if we invented a better alphabet in 1998 and nearly 30 years later, we're still mostly using the old alphabet because, it still works well enough. This is a perfect example of how the internet's greatest strength, backwards compatibility and gradual evolution, is also its greatest weakness. The internet's sense of humor, Easter eggs in protocols. Did you know the internet has jokes built into it? RFC 1149, published on April 1st, 1990, details a standard for the transmission of IP datagrams on avian carriers. Translation: sending internet data by carrier pigeon. It's a joke RFC, but technically functional. In 2001, a group in Norway actually implemented it. They successfully transmitted data packets by carrier pigeon. The ping time was about 5,000 milliseconds, or 5 seconds, and the packet loss rate was about 50% because one pigeon got lost, but it worked. There's RFC 2324, the Hypertext Coffee Pot Control Protocol. It defines how to control coffee pots over the internet. The HTTP status code 4118 officially means "I'm a teapot," a response a coffee pot would give if you tried to brew tea in it. These are jokes, but they're immortalized in official internet standards documents. The internet has a sense of humor. The Internet of Things, when everything is online. Let's talk about the Internet of Things, the idea that everything should be connected to the internet. Your refrigerator, your doorbell, your light bulbs, your car, your toothbrush, yes, really. Your cat's litter box, yes, really. There are now more IoT devices connected to the internet than there are humans on Earth. By some estimates, there are over 15 billion IoT devices active right now. Here's the problem. Most of these devices are terrible at security. In 2016, a massive cyber attack took down major websites like Twitter, Netflix, and Reddit. The weapon? A botnet called Mirai, composed of hundreds of thousands of hacked IoT devices, security cameras, DVRs, routers, all infected with malware and used to flood servers with traffic. Your smart doorbell could be part of the next major cyber attack. Think about that. The joke in the security community is the S in IoT stands for security. Get it? There is no S in IoT because there is no security. We're connecting everything to the internet without thinking through the consequences. We've created a world where your refrigerator can be used to attack a hospital. As the science fiction author William Gibson wrote, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Well, the future is here, and it's your smart toaster being used in a DDoS attack. Submarine cable repairs, deep-sea internet mechanics. Let's talk about what happens when undersea cables break. It happens more often than you'd think, about 100 to 150 times per year globally. Ships drag anchors, earthquakes shift the ocean floor, sharks bite cables, they're attracted to the electromagnetic fields, fishing trawlers snag them. When a cable breaks, specialized repair ships are dispatched. These ships cost about $100 million each, and there are only about 60 of them in the entire world. The ship sails to the break location, sends down an ROV, remotely operated vehicle, to the ocean floor, cuts the cable on both sides of the break, pulls one end up to the ship, which can take days if the cable is really deep, splices in a new section, sends it back down, then repeats for the other end. The whole process can take weeks and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet, because we have redundant cables, multiple cables connecting the same regions, you probably never notice when a cable breaks. Your data just routes around the problem.
There's a certain poetry to it. Right now, there are ships in the middle of the ocean performing surgery on cables in crushing depths, all so that you can watch cat videos without interruption. Act 6, the future. Quantum internet, the next revolution. Let's talk about where the internet is going. First stop, quantum internet. Right now, all our data is classical, bits that are either 0 or 1. Quantum internet would use qubits, quantum bits that can be both 0 and 1 simultaneously until measured. This sounds like science fiction, but it's real. China has already demonstrated quantum communication via satellite. They transmitted quantum encrypted data between Beijing and Vienna, absolutely unhackable with current technology. The implications are staggering. A quantum internet would be perfectly secure, any eavesdropping would be immediately detected, potentially faster for certain types of computation, and able to connect quantum computers globally. But here's the catch. You can't send quantum information through regular fiber optic cables over long distances. The quantum state is too fragile. It degrades after about 100 to 150 kilometers. The solution? Quantum repeaters, devices that can extend quantum signals without destroying their quantum properties. We don't have working quantum repeaters yet. It's like we've invented the world's most amazing car, but we haven't figured out how to build roads for it. Expect the first practical quantum internet networks by 2030-2035, connecting research institutions and governments. Consumer quantum internet? Probably 2040s or 2050s. Starlink and satellite internet, the sky-based alternative. Remember earlier when I said the internet is mostly cables, not satellites? That might be changing. SpaceX's Starlink is deploying thousands of satellites into low Earth orbit to provide internet globally. As of early 2026, there are over 6,000 Starlink satellites in orbit. The plan is to eventually have 12,000, possibly up to 42,000. The advantage? Coverage anywhere on Earth. The middle of the ocean, the Sahara Desert, rural Montana, all with high-speed internet. The disadvantage? Latency is still higher than cables, though much better than old satellite internet. It's expensive, and we're filling low Earth orbit with satellites. Astronomers are furious because these satellites interfere with telescope observations. Space debris experts are worried about creating Kessler syndrome, a cascading collision effect that could make certain orbital zones unusable. But the technology works. Ukraine has used Starlink extensively during the war, providing internet connectivity when ground infrastructure was destroyed. Remote communities with no viable cable internet option finally have high-speed access. It's a perfect example of how technology solves some problems while creating new ones. The energy problem, Bitcoin and AI. Here's an uncomfortable truth. The internet uses an enormous and growing amount of energy. Bitcoin mining alone consumes about 150 terawatt hours per year, roughly the same as the entire country of Argentina. AI training and inference is even worse. Training GPT-3 consumed about 1,287 megawatt hours of electricity, roughly what 120 US homes use in a year. And that's just one model. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and others are training models constantly. Every ChatGPT query uses an estimated 2 to 4 watt-hours of electricity, about 10 times what a Google search uses. As AI becomes more prevalent, we're looking at a potential explosion in energy usage. Some estimates suggest AI could consume 3 to 4% of global electricity by 2030. The internet was supposed to save energy by eliminating physical stuff. No more paper, no more travel, etc. But we're now learning that digital stuff has its own massive energy footprint. There's no easy solution. More efficient chips help, but they're offset by increased usage. Renewable energy helps, but we're not building solar farms fast enough to keep up. As the saying goes, software is eating the world. But apparently it's really hungry and needs a lot of electricity to digest. The splinternet, one internet or many. Here's a concerning trend. The global internet might be fracturing into regional splinternets. China has the Great Wall, creating a separate Chinese internet with different services, different rules, different content.
Russia has been testing the ability to disconnect from the global internet entirely, creating a sovereign RUNet. The EU has data sovereignty laws that require certain data to stay within EU borders. Various countries have different content moderation laws, different privacy requirements, different censorship policies. We might be heading toward a world where there isn't one internet, but multiple internets that sometimes connect and sometimes don't. The optimistic view, diversity of governance models, letting different cultures approach the internet differently. The pessimistic view, the end of the global internet, fracturing into walled gardens controlled by governments and corporations. As internet pioneer Vint Cerf has warned, the internet is threatened by many things, but the biggest threat is the potential for it to be fragmented, to be broken into pieces. Web3, blockchain, and decentralization. Let's talk about Web3, the supposed next evolution of the internet. The idea? Instead of centralized servers owned by corporations, we have decentralized networks where users own their data and content. Instead of Facebook owning your profile, you own it on the blockchain. Instead of YouTube hosting videos, they're distributed across a peer-to-peer network. Instead of PayPal processing transactions, smart contracts handle transactions. In theory, this gives power back to users. No company can ban you, censor you, or sell your data. In practice, it's complicated. Blockchain technology is slow, energy-intensive, and doesn't scale well. Most Web3 applications are actually fairly centralized in practice, and the crypto speculation has turned much of the space into a casino. But some ideas have merit. Decentralized file storage, like IPFS, could make censorship harder. Smart contracts could automate certain transactions without intermediaries. Digital ownership could give creators more control. My prediction, Web3 won't replace the current internet, but some decentralized technologies will be adopted where they make sense, while most of the internet remains centralized because centralization is simply more efficient. It's like how email is decentralized. Anyone can run an email server, but most people use Gmail, Outlook, or Yahoo anyway because they're convenient. The future is probably hybrid, some decentralization where it matters, centralization where convenience wins. Act 7. The human internet, 115 to 130 minutes. The real network, people. Let's zoom out and talk about what the internet actually is at a human level. The internet is not routers and cables. It's not packets and protocols. Those are just the plumbing. The internet is people trying to connect with other people. It's someone in a small town in India learning web development through YouTube tutorials and getting a job at a Silicon Valley company without ever leaving home. It's grandparents seeing their grandchildren on video calls. It's activists organizing protests, coordinating across borders in real time. It's teenagers finding communities where they belong when they feel isolated in their physical world. It's researchers in different countries collaborating on cancer treatments. It's someone lonely at 2 a.m. finding a forum where people understand their struggles. The technology is impressive, yes, but the human impact is what actually matters. There's a beautiful quote from author Kevin Kelly. The internet is the first thing that humanity has built that humanity doesn't understand. The largest experiment in anarchy that we have ever had. And he's right. We built something so complex that no single person understands all of it. And yet it works, mostly, because millions of people are cooperating to keep it running. The dark side, what we've lost. But let's be honest about the costs. We've created systems of surveillance that would make Orwell beep. Every click, every search, every website visited is tracked, logged, analyzed, and sold. We've created filter bubbles that trap people in echo chambers, reinforcing their existing beliefs and making them more extreme. We've enabled harassment at scale, cyberbullying, doxing, swatting, revenge porn. We've spread misinformation faster than truth. A false story reaches 1,500 people 6 times faster than a true story, according to MIT research. We've given everyone a voice, which sounds democratic, except that we've also given equal voice to experts and crackpots, doctors and anti-vaxxers, journalists and conspiracy theorists. As the comedian Bo Burnham said, the internet is everything, everywhere, all at once, and it's too much. It's too much. He performed a whole comedy special on the internet's impact on mental health. It was funny and devastating in equal measure. Digital well-being, fighting back. But there's hope. We're starting to recognize the problems and fight back. Digital well-being is a growing field. Screen time limits, app blockers, digital detoxes. The European Union is passing laws requiring companies to be more transparent about data collection and giving users more control. Platforms are slowly, reluctantly, implementing better content moderation. We're having conversations about tech ethics, about the responsibilities of companies, about what kind of internet we want to build. There's a movement toward calm technology that doesn't constantly demand your attention. I think the next decade will be about correcting course. We built the internet quickly, with incredible ambition, but without fully thinking through the consequences. Now we're in the phase of making it more humane, more ethical, more aligned with human flourishing. It won't be easy. The financial incentives push toward more engagement, more data collection, more addiction, but the pushback is real. The internet nobody sees, infrastructure workers. Let me end with a tribute to the people who keep the internet running, the ones you never think about. The network engineers monitoring routers at 3 a.m. when something goes wrong. The cable repair technicians on ships in the middle of the ocean fixing submarine cables in storms. The data center workers maintaining servers in loud, cold warehouses. The security researchers finding vulnerabilities before hackers do. The content moderators looking at the worst humanity has to offer every day so that we don't have to. When you click a link and it loads instantly, that's thousands of people doing their jobs well. When the internet goes down and comes back up quickly, that's people working overnight to fix it. The internet feels magical because we don't see the labor behind it. But it's not magic. It's millions of person-hours of work, maintenance, and care. There's a great scene in the movie The Martian where Matt Damon's character says, "I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this." That's what internet infrastructure workers do every day. They science the shit out of keeping a possibly complex system running smoothly. So the next time your video loads without buffering, pour one out for the network engineer who optimized that route. The next time you send an email that arrives instantly, thank the protocol designers who made it possible. The next time your internet works seamlessly, remember the invisible army keeping it alive. Conclusion: what we've learned. So what have we learned? The internet is physical. Cables, buildings, routers, all consuming vast amounts of electricity and requiring constant maintenance. The internet is logical. Protocols, addressing schemes, routing algorithms, all working together in a coordinated dance. The internet is social. Agreements between companies, cooperation between competitors, communities of engineers solving problems together. The internet is economic. A multi-trillion-dollar ecosystem with complex flows of money and incentives. The internet is political. Questions of governance, censorship, surveillance, and power. And most importantly, the internet is human. It's our greatest tool for connection, for learning, for expression, for building the future. It's also flawed, sometimes toxic, often frustrating, and occasionally terrifying. But it's ours. We built it. We maintain it. We can shape what it becomes. The internet's superpower: resilience. You know what's most amazing about the internet? It's almost impossible to destroy. There's no off switch, no headquarters to bomb, no CEO to kidnap. It's a distributed network specifically designed to route around damage. This was intentional. The early internet was funded by DARPA, the US military's research arm, specifically because they wanted a communications network that could survive a nuclear war. If half the routers in the world disappeared tomorrow, the internet would slow down, but it would still work. Data would find new routes. This resilience is built into the architecture. It's in the packet switching design, the redundant cables, the DNS system with multiple servers, the BGP protocol that automatically routes around failures. The internet is like a living organism with a distributed nervous system. Cut off one tentacle and the others keep working. As internet pioneer John Gilmore famously said, "The net interprets censorship as damage and routes around it." That's beautiful and a little terrifying. Beautiful because it means the internet is incredibly robust. Terrifying because it means controlling or fixing the internet is almost impossible. Final thoughts: the internet's promise and peril.
We're living through a unique moment in human history. For the first time ever, nearly everyone on the planet can communicate with nearly everyone else instantly for almost free. Information that once required traveling to a library and searching through card catalogs is now accessible from your pocket in seconds. You can learn almost anything from almost anywhere. A kid in rural Africa can access the same educational resources as a kid in Manhattan. That's unprecedented. In all of human history, we've never had anything like this. But with great power comes great responsibility, and we're still figuring out how to wield this power wisely. The internet can spread knowledge or misinformation. It can connect people or polarize them. It can empower individuals or enable surveillance. It can be a force for democracy or authoritarianism. It's not inherently good or bad. It's a tool. And like any powerful tool, everything depends on how we use it. As the science fiction writer William Gibson wrote, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. That's true of the internet too. Some people have access to the full promise of the internet, high speed, unrestricted, empowering. Others have slow, censored, or no access at all. The question for the next few decades is, how do we distribute the internet's benefits more evenly? How do we mitigate its harms? How do we govern something that was designed to be ungovernable? How do we make it serve humanity rather than the other way around? I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure anyone does. But I do know this. Understanding how the internet works, really works at a deep level, is the first step to having informed opinions about these questions. You can't fix what you don't understand. You can't regulate what you can't comprehend. You can't protect what you don't know is vulnerable. So thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for caring enough about this incredible, flawed, essential network to spend an hour and a half learning how it actually works. The internet is one of humanity's greatest achievements. It's also one of our biggest challenges. And now you understand it better than 99% of people on Earth. Use that knowledge wisely. The last word. I'll leave you with one final thought, a quote from technologist Jaron Lanier. Emphasizing the crowd means de-emphasizing individual humans in the design of society, and when you ask people not to be humans, they revert to bad, mob-like behaviors. The internet gives us the power to be our best selves, creative, collaborative, compassionate. It also gives us the power to be our worst selves, cruel, divisive, destructive. Which version wins depends on the choices we make individually and collectively about how we build, govern, and use this remarkable technology. The internet is not done being invented. We're still in the early days. What it becomes is up to us. So go forth, build things, connect with people, learn, create, question, push back against the parts that don't serve us, amplify the parts that do. The internet is whatever we make it. Let's make it something worth having.